friends, welcome back to the DeClerc Homestead. This is Beth, and I'm heading over to the crop garden today to do some work for my 30-day garden prep, clean up for winter, get ready for the next growing season challenge. And if you're just joining now, you can find all the videos for the past 20 plus days in a playlist on my channel. Today I need to get this tarp out of here because we stole some of the sandbags to use for storing carrots in the root cellar. So it's kind of been flopping around, and honestly, this tarp's just kind of at the end of its life. I've had it for 5+ years, so it doesn't do its job anymore, and unfortunately it's time for it to just go, and then the dogs will not continue to rip it up and have little shards of tarp all over the place. But I figured since we're clearing that up, it might be a good time to start putting the landscape fabric down for this growing space. Now, I mentioned before that this crop garden is going to be 100% landscape fabric, and just to give you kind of a backstory about this growing space, I first started growing here in the year 2021. So at the end of the 2020 season, I covered it with a tarp. We actually did have a friend come and disc it lightly, but this was all alfalfa field, and everybody that I talked to and everything I read said you cannot kill alfalfa. The root systems are too deep. You have to spray them with Roundup. And obviously this is a growing space for our food. I was not willing to do that. So I decided to go all in landscape fabric for this area and see if that would keep the alfalfa from taking over. And it did. And it did an amazing job. Now, this is a big space. It's about double the size of my other garden. It's 50 by 150 or so. So having the landscape fabric also just makes it possible for me to maintain. Now, I've done a lot of things over here, basically all of my either large space crops or large quantity crops. My plan next year, though, is to have this entire space be a pumpkin and melon and squash patch. So in order to set myself up for really, really easy planting next spring, I want to get the landscape fabric down now, and anything that does try to grow up them next spring, I won't have to fight with. So the first thing I need to do is get this kind of perimeter fabric is the only fabric that is still left on here. And I kind of just have this down as a guide to where my garden stops and this kind of lane ends. It's gotten a little bit of overgrown, as dirt gets pushed onto it. Sometimes seeds will blow on and start to root. So I just need to sweep this off so that way I have a clear spot to overlap my new piece of fabric that's going to go along it. Now, as I was cleaning this off, mind you, this fabric has been down here for 3 years now, and it's still in perfectly fine condition. It's still doing its job. There's nothing growing through the fabric. It's just growing on it or kind of on the side of it. But I realized that I probably need to just take it up. It's not the most straight strip of fabric, and because of all of the growth kind of on the edges of it, I think it's going to make my new fabric really lumpy looking, which isn't the end of the world, but if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it nicely. So we decided to pull it up, and I'm not going to reuse it right here, but when I have a piece of fabric like this that's been used and it's not in perfect condition, I will use this places that are wanting to be maintained but don't necessarily need to look perfect or have lines on them. So underneath our wood stack area or underneath our patio or places like that. That way I'm not just creating trash, but I'm still using the most functional pieces for the places that I have to work. I have 2 new 300-foot rolls of 4-foot wide fabric from Grower Solution, which I know isn't going to be enough to do this entire plot. It's not even going to do half of it, but I figured I will start with these new pieces and then I'll piece in some of my other existing pieces that I have in the barn. I like to buy my fabric in 4-foot wide sections just because it's the most coverage but easiest to still like handle the roll sizes. But you can get fabric in up to, I think, 12-foot wide lengths. It comes in 2, 3, 4, 6. There's all kinds of different widths of rolls that you can get depending on how much space you're looking to cover. Typically, if I'm working in my main garden, I have 4-foot wide beds. Out here, I could definitely use a 12-foot wide roll. It's just a matter of being able to like manhandle that heavy of a roll. So 4 is what I have, so that's what I'm going to work with. And originally my plan was to go along this same line where I had the old perimeter fabric, but I just wanted to double check and make sure that I was making everything as straight as possible, especially because this fabric has lines on it, unlike the other fabric that I used. And so I didn't want it to look kind of wonky having the lines not match up. So we ended up getting a measuring roller thing just to see what the spacing was on this grassy patch between the fabric and the fence line. And based on our measurements, I was either way off with my original footprint of my garden, or it's like not a straight rectangle and it's diagonal. We ended up going off the other way too, over by the orchard garden and measuring it, and oh my goodness, we were having such a time with this whole mathing of it. So ultimately, we ended up pausing the project as a whole because we ran out of time. Just to give you guys kind of like an easier visual, here is a drawing of this area. So the fence lines go around the garden and they make, it's kind of like a C shape around this area. And what I think I need to do tomorrow is I need to measure between the fence posts, the corner posts on the east side and then on the west side, and make sure that those are the same length. I don't know if they are, they might not be. But if those are the same length, then what I'll do is I'll just measure off of that north fence post to the end of my wood chips in my orchard garden. And I'll start rolling the fabric on that north line instead of this south one where the lane to the compost pile is. So hopefully that makes it a little bit more clear, but I think going off of the wood chip line makes more sense than going where I was originally thinking to start. So yeah, that's where we left off. Made some progress, but not much to show for it. We will pick it back up tomorrow though, and I'm just excited about having a really fresh, clean, ready to plant slate over here come next spring. It will be like such a blessing to myself. So thanks for following along, you guys. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.